Rosa Delgado counted the register drawer twice, out loud, sitting on the curb. $41. After a lunch rush that should have been $300. She smoothed each bill flat against her knee. She stacked the coins by size. She said the number under her breath like it might change if she pronounced it Kinder. It did not change. $41, and a serving window still warm from steam, and a stack of paper napkins nobody had used. She did not cry. She was 34 years old and she had learned that crying cost time, and time was the one thing the truck did not sell. Then came the second blow, and this one had a voice. There was a notice taped to the serving window. White paper, black border. The kind of official that makes your stomach drop before you read a word. It went up right in front of the noon line. 11 regulars stood there with their wallets already open. And the man on the other end of the phone, the one Rosa had on speaker because her hands were full, said it flat and clean, like he was reading a weather report. Miss Delgado, the truck secures the loan. 30 days. Or we take the asset. 11 people looked at their shoes. 11 people pretended the sidewalk was suddenly very interesting. That is the thing about shame in public. Everybody helps you carry it by looking away. And then a coffee slid across the fold-down counter. Adam Voss did not say much. He never did. He pushed the cup toward her, black, and beside it he set a folded square of paper, creased sharp at the corners like everything he touched. He didn't open it. He didn't explain it. There's one way the bank can't touch it in 30 days, he said. That was all. He didn't say what the way was. Cut. Now listen. If you believe love is built with two pairs of hands, this story is for you. Before we go on, do one small thing. Tap that subscribe button, because stories like this one live or die on whether you're here for the next chapter. And leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far this little food truck travels. Go ahead. I'll wait. All right, let me take you back to the beginning. Back to the truck, and the woman who cooked in it like it was a church. The truck had a name, and the name was Delgado's, and the name was a woman. Rosa's mother built it from a converted taco cart. That's the honest history. Not a franchise. Not a loan from a bank that smiled. A cart, a griddle, a woman with a bad hip and good hands, working a corner downtown until the corner learned her by name. She saved for the truck one plate at a time. She painted it herself. She was proud of the paint in a way that embarrassed Rosa a little when she was young and forgave her completely now that she was grown. Her mother cooked like prayer. That's the only way Rosa knew to say it. The mold took 2 days. The masa got pressed by hand because a machine, her mother said, could not feel when the dough was tired. She priced everything like a saint, which is a beautiful way to feed a neighborhood and a terrible way to stay alive. $6 for a plate that cost her $4 to make. Free coffee for the old man who came every morning and never had the 6. She fed the block. The block loved her. And when she was dying, she left Rosa 2 things. She left her the truck, and she left her a debt. Rosa did not know the size of the debt. That was the cruelty of it. Her mother had borrowed against the truck to keep the truck running, the way you might sell your own arm to keep your hand. Rosa found the paperwork after the funeral, in a shoebox, under the good tablecloth they only used at Christmas. Numbers she didn't understand, signed in her mother's careful hand. Rosa cooked. Rosa did not do numbers. She had told herself a long time ago that numbers were a language of betrayal, that money was the thing that came into a room and left with something you loved. She trusted a recipe. She did not trust a spreadsheet. A recipe you could taste. You knew where you stood with a thing you could taste. So she cooked, and she drowned, quietly, $141 day at a time. There was one thing keeping the lights on, and his name was Adam. A year back, a man had walked up to the truck at 6 in the morning while Rosa was prepping alone in the dark. 37, tired around the eyes, dressed like a man who used to dress better. He ordered nothing. He said he'd heard the truck was in trouble, and he wanted to buy in. A silent steak, 40%. He'd put money in and stay out of her kitchen. Rosa had almost told him to leave. She didn't trust it. A man in a good coat, offering money, standing in the dark. Everything in her mother's voice said no. But the electric bill said yes, and the electric bill won. Adam Voss bought 40% of Delgado's and then did exactly what he promised. He stayed out of the kitchen. He paid the bills she couldn't. He showed up before dawn, every dawn, to help her prep, and he never once told her how to cook. What Rosa did not know, could not have known, was that over 100 pre-dawn shifts, standing beside her in the blue dark while she pressed masa and hummed her mother's songs, Adam Voss had fallen completely in love with her. He never said a word. That was the whole tragedy of the man. He'd spent 15 years learning how to move money and never once learned how to say a simple thing to a woman he loved. So he said it in the only language he trusted. He fixed the generator. He restocked the propane. He balanced the books at midnight so she could sleep. He loved her in logistics. And one gray morning, prepping side by side, he said a thing so casual that Rosa almost missed it. They were talking about the corner, the lot downtown where the truck parked. Prime real estate, the busiest foot traffic in the district. Adam was wiping down the counter and he said, half to himself, "You know the permit's worth more than the truck." Rosa said, "What permit?" "The legacy vendor permit, your mother's. The city grandfathered it to this lot when she registered, back before they tightened the rules. It's non-transferable. It stays with the owner. Nobody can buy it, nobody can move it." He shrugged. Worth more than the truck itself, honestly, but nobody ever thinks about the permit. He said it like a man mentioning the weather. He tossed it away in one line. Rosa filed it under things Adam knows that I don't, and went back to the mole. Neither of them knew, that morning, that somebody had already thought very hard about the permit. His name was Marcus Trell, and he worked for a company called Pillar Lending and Asset Recovery, and he wanted the lot, not the money. Understand that, because Rosa didn't, not for a long time. Trell did not want to be paid back. Being paid back was the worst thing that could happen to his plan. Trell wanted Rosa to fail, so Pillar could seize the truck, and here was the elegant, ugly heart of it, seize the permit that came grandfathered with the owner and the lot. He already had a buyer lined up, a food hall developer with deep pockets who wanted that exact downtown corner. All Trell had to do was wait for a woman who cooked like a saint and priced like one to run out of days. And then he decided not to wait. The call came on a Tuesday. Rosa remembers it was a Tuesday, because Tuesdays were slow, and she'd been grateful for the quiet. The phone rang, and a voice she'd never heard introduced itself as Marcus Trell, regional director, and then said the words that turned her stomach to water. The note was being called. The full balance. 30 days. She said she could make payments. She'd been making payments. Trell said, almost gently, that the terms allowed for acceleration, and that the terms had been accelerated, and that in 30 days, if the balance was not paid in full, Pilar would take possession of the asset. He called her mother's truck the asset. Twice, then he hung up. And Rosa stood in the middle of the truck she was born into. And for the first time she understood that the block loving her was not going to be enough. Love did not appear in any column. She had done the math her whole life with her heart, and the heart, it turned out, was not legal tender. That was the day the coffee slid across the counter. That was the folded paper. That was Adam saying there was one way, and not saying what the way was. He told her that night, after close, with the lights off and the propane cold. He unfolded the paper on the fold-down counter and smoothed it flat, the way she'd smoothed the $41, and she saw it was a napkin. He'd worked it out on a napkin, in pencil, in that sharp, small hand. "They can seize the truck," he said, "because you own it alone, and the note's against you alone. One person, one asset, one signature. Easy for them." He turned the napkin. "But a marriage isn't one person. If we marry, the truck and the permit move into a joint marital entity, community property. And Pilar can't reach into that and pull out an asset inside 30 days. Not clean, not without a fight in court that costs them more than the lot is worth." He looked up. It buys us a year, Rosa. Maybe more. She stared at him. It's paperwork, he said quickly, because he could see her face doing something, and he was afraid of what. It's a structure. That's all. You keep the truck. You keep your kitchen. I keep the numbers off your back. Nothing changes except a signature. Nothing changes except a signature. He believed it when he said it. That was the saddest part. He'd built her a lifeboat and told himself it was just a spreadsheet. Rosa felt the humiliation of it climb up her neck. To need this. To be a woman who fed a whole neighborhood and could not save the one thing her mother left her without borrowing a man's last name, like a tool from a drawer. She thought about her mother painting the truck by hand. She thought about the shoebox under the Christmas tablecloth. She said yes. She said yes for the truck. She wants that on the record. Not for him. She barely knew him. This quiet man who fixed generators. She said yes the way you grab a rope you did not choose. Because the alternative is the water. They married on a Tuesday, because Tuesdays were slow. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old paper. Rosa wore her apron. She hadn't planned to, but the morning got away from her, and there was prep, and there was the drive. And by the time she remembered to change, she was already climbing the steps, so she got married in a Delgado's apron, with a stain near the hem she couldn't get out. Carmen was the only witness. Carmen was 61, Rosa's aunt, Rosa's only family left in the world, the keeper of Rosa's mother's memory. She stood in the back in her good dress, the one she wore to funerals and weddings both, because at her age, they came to the same thing. And she watched her niece marry a stranger to save her sister's truck. And her face did 100 things at once. The clerk read the words. Adam said his part low and even. Rosa said hers looking at the flag behind the clerk's head, because she couldn't look at Adam. When it was done, when they signed, Carmen took Rosa's hands. And Rosa said the thing that came up out of her without permission. The truest thing she owned. I didn't marry you to save a marriage, she said. I married you to save my mother's hands. Adam heard it. He was standing right there. He nodded, once, like a man accepting a fair price. And something in him closed a door so quietly she didn't hear it shut. That night he went back to the truck alone. Rosa found out later. She'd gone home to sleep the flat, dead sleep of a woman who'd been married and hadn't been kissed. And Adam drove back to the lot in the dark and stood in front of the serving window. There was a latch on that window. Brass, bent, old. Rosa's mother had installed it herself when she built the truck, and it had never worked right, always sticking, always needing a shove. Rosa had cursed it 1,000 times, and loved it the way you love a thing your dead mother's hands touched. Adam got his tools, and he re-welded the latch, there in the dark, alone, on his wedding night. Straightened the brass, fixed the bend. He didn't tell her he'd done it. She found it the next morning, opening the window, and it swung clean and easy for the first time in her life, and she stood there confused, holding a latch that suddenly worked. Not knowing that a man had spent his wedding night on his knees, fixing the one thing her mother left broken. That's Adam Voss. Remember the latch. It matters more than you'd think. For 2 weeks, nothing changed, except the numbers changed everything. Adam came to her with the menu. She'd braced for this since the wedding, the moment the silent partner stopped being silent. He laid the menu on the counter, and beside it, a page of figures. 11 items lose money, he said, every single time you sell them. Your mother priced them in 1998 and never moved them. This one, he pointed. You lose $2 a plate. You sold 40 of these last month. That's $80 you paid customers to eat here. Rosa bristled. That plate was her mother's. Everything on that menu was somebody's Tuesday, somebody's after the funeral, somebody's first date. She told him a menu wasn't a spreadsheet. She told him he could keep the numbers off her back and off her menu too. He didn't argue. He never argued. He just said, then we die in 3 weeks with a beautiful menu. And then the second thing, the location. You park at noon, he said. The office tower, 2 blocks up, empties for lunch at 11:40. By noon, they've already bought a sad sandwich in the lobby. We move to the tower curb. We open at 11:30. We catch them hungry. Rosa hated it. The corner was her mother's corner. The permit was tied to the lot, this lot, and moving felt like betrayal. But Adam explained she could work the tower curb on the same permit within the district, and it was only lunch. And the dinner crowd stayed downtown. She fought him for 3 days. Then she was tired, and the truck was dying, and she let him have the menu and the clock. She cut 11 items. She repriced the rest. She moved the truck to the office tower and opened at 11:30. And she watched a line form around the block. Not a good day. A great day. The tower emptied, and it emptied hungry, and it walked straight into the smell of her mother's mole at exactly the moment its stomach woke up. She ran out of the carnitas by 12:15. She had to start a second batch. She had never in her life started a second batch of anything at lunch. At the end of that day, counting a drawer that came to $460. Rosa stood on the same curb where she'd once counted 41, and she looked at the quiet man wiping down the counter, and she said his name on purpose for the first time. Adam. He looked up. It worked. 2 words. But she'd chosen them. And he heard the choosing. That was the first degree. The first small turn of trust between them, like a latch that suddenly, after a lifetime of sticking, swings clean. She started to notice things. That's how it goes. You give someone 1 degree of trust and suddenly you can see them. She noticed he knew how she took her coffee. Scalding and bitter, no sugar. The way you drink coffee when you've stopped expecting it to be pleasant and just want it to be strong. She never told him that. He'd learned it. Some mornings she wasn't paying attention, he'd watched, and now every dawn there it was at her elbow, too hot to drink and exactly right. And she noticed the other thing, the one he didn't want her to see. He hadn't eaten. It was 2 in the afternoon and the man had been on his feet since 5, and he hadn't eaten a thing. She caught him leaning on the counter for 1 second, just one, the way you lean when your blood sugar's gone, and then straightening like nothing. She made him a plate without asking. She set it down hard so he couldn't refuse it. He ate it looking surprised, like a man who'd forgotten food was for him too. She didn't understand yet why he skipped meals. She would. It would break her heart when she did, but that afternoon she just knew he did it, and she filed it, the way he'd filed her coffee, in the drawer where you keep the things you know about a person you're starting to see. And then the internet found them. It was going to happen. A truck with a line around the block downtown. That's content. And someone with a phone and a food blog came to see what the fuss was. She filmed the food, which was fine. The food deserved filming. But she also filmed the married partners. And the married partners on camera barely spoke. Because they didn't. Rosa cooked. Adam ran numbers. They passed each other in a space the size of a hallway, and they were, for all the world could see, 2 strangers who happened to share a truck and a last name. No touch, no warmth. Rosa calling out orders, Adam calling out totals, the 2 of them orbiting like planets that had never once collided. The blogger noticed. The blogger made it the story. Is Delgado's a real marriage or a real good marketing stunt? The clip did what clips do. It traveled. People argued in the comments about whether the food truck couple were faking it for attention, and some of them said cruel, clever things, and Rosa read everyone at midnight the way you press a bruise. The clip traveled to exactly the wrong desk. Marcus Trell watched a video of a married couple who did not act married, and he smiled the way a man smiles when the universe hands him a lever. Because if the marriage was a sham, if it existed only to shield an asset from a lender, then it was fraud. And a fraudulent marriage could not shield anything. And Pillar could take the truck, and the permit, and the lot, clean. Trell filed a fraud inquiry with the city's permit office. Quiet, official, patient. He asked the city to examine whether the marriage of Rosa Delgado and Adam Voss was a bona fide union or a financial instrument dressed as one. Their arrangement, the thing Adam swore was just paperwork, was now public, now judged, now the subject of a file with a case number. And here's the thing about being accused of faking a marriage. The only defense is to be, in public, married, which they were not, which they had never once tried to be. Adam brought her the letter from the permit office. He didn't soften it. He put it on the counter next to the coffee and let her read. Rosa read it twice, out loud, the way she counted money, because reading a terrible thing out loud made it real enough to fight. They can revoke the permit, she said. If they decide it's fake, they can take the permit. Yes, the permit's the whole lot. The permit's my mother's corner. Yes, she set the letter down. She was quiet a long time. Then she said the thing that surprised them both. Then, we prove the business is real, she said. Whatever they think about the marriage. Nobody can call a truck with a line around the block a fake. We get so real they choke on it. Their chance came 48 hours later, and it came as a disaster. A corporate launch. 200 people. The caterer had fallen through that morning, some kitchen fire catastrophe. And a frantic event planner had eaten at Delgado's once and remembered the mole, and she called at 9 a.m. begging, 200 plates. Tomorrow night. Money that could pay down real chunks of the note, and an audience of exactly the kind of downtown professionals who decided which food trucks lived and died. It was impossible. 200 plates out of a truck built to serve one at a time. Rosa's first instinct was no. Her mother would have said no. You don't promise what your hands can't make. Adam said, we can do it. We? He'd never said we before. He'd said the numbers and the structure and the paperwork. He'd said, you keep the truck and I keep the books. He had never once put the two of them inside a single word. We can do it. And Rosa, God help her, believed him. That night was the first time they built something together with their hands instead of on paper. Adam did what Adam did. He solved the logistics like a man defusing a bomb. He rented a second griddle. He mapped the prep so nothing bottlenecked. He figured the exact order to cook 200 plates so the last one came out as hot as the first. He worked the numbers of it, the flow, the timing, the impossible geometry of feeding 200 people from a hallway. Rosa did what Rosa did. She cooked like her mother. 2 days of mole compressed into a night of controlled fury, her hands flying, her mother's songs under her breath. She tasted and adjusted and tasted again. She made the masa feel untired by sheer will. And somewhere around 3 a.m, elbow to elbow in a space too small for one person to work in comfort, they stopped being two people sharing a truck. They found a rhythm. He handed, she cooked. She called, he answered. They moved like they'd done it 1,000 years, and neither of them said anything about it, because saying it would break it. At 3:40, Rosa looked up from the griddle and caught him already looking at her, and for 1 second, neither of them looked away. Then the timer went off, and they got back to work. But it had happened. Both of them knew it had happened. The launch was a triumph. 200 plates, hot, on time, and the room went quiet the way a room goes quiet when the food is better than the room expected. People asked for the truck's name. People took the truck's card. The event planner cried a little and hugged Rosa and booked them for 2 more. And a man named Del Okafor tasted the mole and changed the shape of the story. Del was a food hall developer, and he was there scouting, the way developers scout, looking for the next thing to put under a nice roof and charge rent on. He tasted Rosa's mole, and he did something developers don't usually do. He put down his fork, and he found her. He was decent. That has to be said plainly, because it would have been easier if he weren't. Del Okafor was a good man. He looked Rosa in the eye and told her the truck was the best food he'd eaten in a year, and that he could give her a real kitchen, a real corner in his new food hall, a clean deal with real money, no lender breathing down her neck, no note, no 30 days. A buyout that would make her whole, and then some. And then, because he was honest to the point of foolishness. He told her the other thing too, that he'd like to take her to dinner sometime. Somewhere she didn't have to cook. He meant both offers. That was the trouble with Dell. He meant the business, and he meant the man. And there was nothing false in either. Rosa stood in that catering hall at midnight, apron on, triumph still ringing in her ears, and understood that a door had just opened. A clean, decent door. A way out that didn't involve a fraud file, or a lender, or a marriage she'd signed to save her mother's hands. A good man with a real offer, looking at her like she was worth looking at. She said she'd think about it. She looked across the room while she said it. Adam was breaking down the griddle, alone, not eating again. And he had watched Del Okafor find her, and his face was doing absolutely nothing, which is the face a man makes when he is holding everything. Then came the hearing notice, and it made the choice sharp. The permit office set a date. The city would formally examine the marriage. If they ruled it a sham, the permit was gone. The lot was gone. The corner her mother built one plate at a time was gone. And the only way to keep it was to stand up in public and be, provably, truly married. To be what they'd signed and never lived. Trell was pleased. Trell had them exactly where he wanted. Marry for real and prove him wrong, or stay strangers and lose everything. He'd built a trap with only 2 doors, and he was betting they'd freeze in the hallway between. And here is where Rosa Delgado surprised everyone, including herself. Including you, maybe, if you thought you knew where this was going. Dell's offer sat on the table. The safe door. Take the buyout, walk away from the note, let the corner go. Keep the recipes, start clean under Dell's nice roof with Dell's kind eyes. Every reasonable person in her life would have told her to take it. Carmen half told her to take it. It was the sane choice. It was the door marked survival. Rosa did not take the safe door. Rosa went the other way entirely. Rosa doubled down. She'd been quiet for 2 days after the catering money cleared, and Adam thought she was deciding between him and Dell, between the fight and the buyout. He was bracing to lose her the honest way, to the better man. He'd already started, in the private place where he kept his heart, letting her go. Instead, she came to him one gray morning, before dawn, with a folded piece of paper of her own. She smoothed it flat on the counter, the way he'd once smoothed the napkin, and slid it toward him. It was a lease. A lease on a second truck. Signed, in her name. Rosa Delgado, alone. Adam looked at it a long time. "What is this?" "They want to call us fake," Rosa said. Her chin was up. Her mother's chin. "Let's make us too big to erase. 1 truck they can seize. 1 truck they can call a stunt. But a brand?" She tapped the lease. "You can't repossess a brand, Adam. You can't take a corner back from a name that's already in 3 neighborhoods. So we're not going to hide in the marriage and hope they don't look. We're going to build the thing so loud and so real that the word fake dies in their mouths." Adam Voss, who had spent his life keeping the numbers off other people's backs, who had built her a lifeboat and called it a structure, stared at the woman he loved as she bet the catering money and her mother's last truck on going bigger instead of safer, and he understood that he had badly, completely, wonderfully underestimated her. "That's insane," he said quietly. "You said we can do it," Rosa said. "You said we. Did you mean it? Or was that the paperwork talking?" And there it was. The whole thing laid on the counter between the 2 of them in the blue dark, the coffee going cold, the second lease signed in her own bold hand. Adam opened his mouth to answer. "And that's where I have to leave you tonight, because what he said next, and what it cost him, and the secret he was keeping about who he used to be before he ever walked up to that truck in the dark, that's the part that changes everything. Remember the latch. Remember the corner. Remember that somewhere across town, Marcus Trell was about to open a file that had Adam Voss's real name in it. Comment the city you're watching from. And stay close. The truck's only just getting started. Adam opened his mouth. And what came out was not the answer she wanted. I meant we, he said. I've meant we since the first prep shift. But you have to understand what you just signed. Rosa waited. A second truck doubles the note we owe. It doubles the eyes on us. Every day we grow, Trell watches harder, because every day the permit is worth more to him. Adam set the lease down flat. His hand stayed on it a second longer than it needed to. You want to build the thing too big to erase. I'm telling you, the bigger it gets, the more he wants it. That's not a reason to stop. It's a reason to be faster than him. Rosa let out a breath she'd been holding since the courthouse. Then be faster, she said. And that was the night it turned. Not the wedding. This, two people in a cold truck deciding to run at the thing chasing them instead of away from it. They didn't sleep. Adam pulled the ledgers. Rosa pulled her mother's recipe cards, the ones stained soft at the corners, and she started building a second menu. A leaner one. A menu that could ride in a truck across town and still taste like her mother's hands made it. By dawn, the coffee was gone and the plan was real. The second truck was a wreck when they got it. Rust at the wheel wells. A serving window that stuck. Adam spent 3 nights under it with a work lamp, and Rosa watched him from the curb, and she noticed the thing she always noticed. He didn't eat. She'd bring 2 plates. His would still be there at midnight, cold, while he tightened a bolt for the 4th time. You skip meals, she said one night. Not a question. I eat, Adam said. You don't. Not since we got the second note. You're keeping the money in payroll. She sat down on the curb beside him. Closer than the contract said. I see it, Adam. I count the drawer. I know what a plate costs. You've been feeding my crew out of your own dinner for a month. Adam didn't look up from the wheel well. The crew has kids, he said. I have a spreadsheet. And Rosa, who had sworn on a courthouse Tuesday that this was paperwork, felt something move in her chest that had nothing to do with the truck. The second location opened on a Thursday. Across the river, in the Arts District, where the lunch crowd was younger and hungrier and always on their phones. Adam picked the corner. Rosa cooked the opening. And by the second week, the line wrapped the block, the same way it had at the tower. But a line isn't a brand. Rosa knew that. A line is a good day. A brand is a name people say when you're not there. That's when Nadia came in. Nadia was a designer Rosa knew from the old neighborhood, a woman who'd left to do logos for tech companies and hated every minute of it. She tasted the mole, she closed her eyes, and she said, Rosa, what's the mark? The what? The stamp. The thing that goes on the truck, the cups, the bags. What's the one shape that means Delgado's? Rosa didn't have to think. She walked Nadia to the original truck. She put her hand on the serving window, on the bent brass latch her mother had installed with her own hands, the one Adam had re-welded on their wedding night without saying a word about it. This, Rosa said, my mother's latch. It's crooked. It sticks in winter. And it's the only thing on this truck she touched that's still here. Nadia photographed it from 9 angles. 3 days later, she came back with a drawing. The brass latch, stylized, clean. The little crook in it kept on purpose. Below it, one word, Delgado's. Rosa held the paper and could not speak. That mark went up over the Arts District window first. Then the original. 2 trucks in 2 neighborhoods, the same brass latch glowing over both. A photographer for the city food blog, the same outlet whose earlier clip had called them a stunt, ran a new piece. The truck that married its way out of debt is now a 2-city name. The word fake did not appear once. Rosa signed the 3rd lot that Friday. Downtown, the prime corner. The one the permit was grandfathered to. She should have felt safe. She didn't. Because every night, across town, Marcus Trell was reading. And what Trell was reading had Adam's name in it. The hearing came in the first week of frost. Rosa remembered the frost because she'd scraped it off the windshield at 3:40 in the morning. The way she scraped it off every truck now, 4 windows, 4 latches, her breath white in the dark. She dressed carefully, not the apron, a real jacket. She sat beside Adam in the city permit office and held a folder of everything they'd built. 2 menus, 3 lots. A brand people said out loud. Marcus Trell walked in with one folder. Thin, and he was smiling. The city's question is simple, Trell said to the clerk. Is this a marriage, or is it a device to shield an asset from lawful recovery? I'd like to answer it. He opened his thin folder. By introducing the professional history of Mr. Adam Voss. Rosa turned her head. Mr. Voss did not stumble into this arrangement. Trell went on. Easy, unhurried. A man laying down cards he'd held for weeks. Before he was a silent partner in a food truck, he spent 11 years as a senior structuring analyst. In lending. Asset recovery. The exact business I'm in. He slid a page across. He built marriages like this one for a living. Entities designed to move an asset 1 inch outside the reach of a note. He knows the 30-day window better than my own attorneys. He didn't marry Miss Delgado. He engineered her. The room was very quiet. Rosa looked at Adam, and Adam did not deny it. That was the thing that broke her. He didn't argue. He didn't turn to her with a fast explanation. He just closed his eyes, once, like a man watching a wall come down that he'd built himself. Is that true? Rosa said. Low, only to him. Rosa, is it true? Were you one of them? Yes, Adam said. I was. The clerk kept talking. The hearing kept going. Rosa didn't hear any of it. She heard 100 pre-dawn shifts rearrange themselves in her head. The napkin. The structure. The word we. She'd thought she was learning to trust a man. Now, a stranger in a thin folder was telling her she'd been a line item in a plan built by a professional. And the professional wasn't saying no. She stood up before the hearing ended. She didn't shout. Her mother didn't raise a shouter. She walked out into the frost, and Adam followed her to the truck. And there on the cold curb she took the keys to the second truck out of her jacket and put them in his hand. You built the structure, she said. Her voice didn't shake. That was the worst part. Take the structure. The Arts District truck is yours. It was your corner, your window, your numbers. I'll keep my mother's. The original. The one you found me drowning behind. Rosa, I never lied to you about a single number. No, she said. You lied by staying quiet, which is the only kind of lie you know how to tell. She stepped back. I married you to save my mother's hands. I didn't marry you to be the smartest deal in your career. And she left him standing there, keys in his palm, with the first hard frost coming down on both of them. One lead leaves. The other stays where the story can find him. Here is what Rosa did not see. Because she was 3 neighborhoods away that week, teaching a new cook how to fold a tamale the way her mother folded them. Trell moved. With the marriage in question and Rosa's attention pulled to the frost and the 4th prep kitchen, Pilar Lending filed to seize the original truck. Quietly, on a Tuesday, the way they do everything. Trell didn't want the money. He'd never wanted the money. He wanted the grandfathered permit under the downtown lot, and the only way to get a non-transferable permit was to take the truck it was welded to before the marriage could be proven real. He had 30 days of paperwork lined up like dominoes, and Adam Voss, who knew that window better than Trell's own attorneys, did the one thing no structure could survive. He walked into the permit office alone. He signed 100% of the marital entity over to Rosa Delgado. Every share. The 40% he'd bought a year ago to keep her lights on, gone. Hers. Then he drove to Pilar Lending, sat across from Marcus Trell, and paid the note in full. The original. The second truck. All of it. With his own money. 11 years of a career he'd hated, drained down to zero, spent on a woman who'd handed him back his keys in the frost. "You understand what you're doing," Trell said, watching the transfer clear. "You had a shield. As her husband, you had a claim, a stake, a reason a court believes. You just gave it all to her and paid me off. Now, you're nobody. You're a man with no share and no savings who happens to be married to the owner. If she leaves you tomorrow, you have nothing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," Adam said. He stood up. "For the first time in 11 years, I know exactly what I'm doing." He killed the permit play with a signature and a check. There was nothing left for Trell to take, and there was nothing left protecting Adam. No structure, no stake. Just a man who'd given every dollar away and told no one. Del Okafor found out the way everyone finds out these things. Through the paperwork. He'd had his own attorneys watching the entity, waiting to make Rosa a clean offer once the mess cleared. Del read the transfer twice. Then he called off his lawyers. He drove to the Arts District truck, where he knew Rosa would be, and he found her scrubbing a flat top at closing, alone, still not knowing what Adam had done. "Rosa," Del said. He set down 2 cups of the coffee he'd learned she liked. "Scalding bitter, I came to make you an offer. A better one than the buyout. I came to ask you to let me be the man who stood beside you while you built this." He slid 1 cup toward her. "I'm not going to, because a man beat me to it, and he did it in a way I couldn't match if I tried for the rest of my life." Rosa put down the scrubber. Del told her. All of it. The 100% transfer. The note, paid in full, with Adam's own drained account. The permit play, dead. The frost curb, where she'd handed him keys. And the permit office where he'd handed her a company and walked out with nothing. "He gave you the way out of him," Del said. "That's what the transfer is, Rosa. He knew you thought the marriage was a structure. So he took the structure apart, brick by brick, and left himself standing in the cold with nothing to hold you with. No stake, no leverage. No reason for you to stay, except the one reason a man like him can never say out loud." Del lifted his cup. "He's the better deal. In every column. And I've never been sorrier to be right." He drank the coffee. He left a second cup on the counter for her, and Delphine Okafor, the good man who lost, walked out with his dignity in both hands. Rosa stood in the closed truck a long time. Then she went to find the ledgers. Not the money ones, the others. The ones Adam kept in the back of the 4th prep kitchen, in his own hand, and had never once shown her. She found the payroll pages. Every crew member paid, on time, for 8 straight months, and in the column where his own draw should have been, month after month, a single word. 0. He'd fed her crew out of his dinner. He'd paid her people out of his own wage. He'd re-welded her mother's latch on a wedding night he thought was only paperwork. And when the moment came to save himself, he'd given her the company and taken the cold. Rosa sat down on the floor of the prep kitchen and cried the way she hadn't cried on the $41 curb. Not because she'd lost anything, because she finally understood what she'd been handed. The 3-ribbon launch was already scheduled. It could not be moved. Downtown lot, dusk, the original truck at the center where it belonged. They came anyway. All of them. The 11 regulars, in their same coats, standing in the same loose knot they'd stood in the day the notice went up. The food blogger, camera up, this time for a different kind of story. To Carmen in her good dress, 61 years old, holding something in her arms wrapped in a dish towel. Nadia, watching her brass latch mark glow above 3 ribbons for the first time. And at the back, unwelcome, precise, Marcus Trell, with one last envelope in his coat. String lights ran the length of the original truck. The brass latch logo hung lit above the serving window. The little crook kept on purpose. The crook her mother put there by hand. 3 ribbons, 3 cities, 1 name. The city permit clerk stepped up to the small microphone. "Before we begin," the clerk said, "there's a matter of record to close. A fraud inquiry was filed against the ownership of Delgado's." A pause. Rosa saw Trell shift his weight. "That inquiry is dismissed. The note against the original asset has been paid in full. The marital entity has been dissolved into sole ownership under Rosa Delgado. There is no shielded asset, because there is no debt, and there is no financial motive, because the partner in question has transferred away every share he held. The clerk looked up. The permit stands. The owner stands. This matter is closed. Every head turned toward Marcus Trell. Trell took the envelope out of his coat, the last papers, the ones he'd carried downtown to serve. He looked at the lit latch above the window, and the 3 ribbons, and the 11 regulars, and the woman in the apron who now owned outright the one thing he'd spent a season trying to take. There was nothing to serve. You cannot repossess a paid note. You cannot revoke a clean permit. You cannot prove a financial motive against a man who walked away from every dollar. Trell put the envelope back in his coat. Unopened. He didn't say a word. His arrogance had no card left to play, and a man like that would rather leave silent than be seen losing out loud. He turned up his collar against the cold and walked out of the lot, and the string lights lit him going. And then he was gone, and the corner he'd wanted was a name he could no longer touch. Del Okafor was there too, near the back, a paper cup of Rosa's coffee in his hand. When the clerk finished, Del raised the cup. Not to Rosa. To Adam, who stood at the very back in an apron, trying to be invisible. Best food in 3 cities, Del called, loud enough to carry. And the smarter man won. He drank. He tipped the cup. And the good rival bowed out the way decent men do, on his feet, wishing them well. Rosa walked to the serving window. She didn't go to the microphone. She went to the window, the original one, her mother's, and she put her hand on the bent brass latch. The crowd went quiet. Even the blogger lowered the camera an inch. Rosa turned the latch. It stuck, the way it always stuck in the cold, and then it gave, and she lifted the serving window, open as the sole owner of Delgado's, for the first time in her life. The 11 regulars cheered. Loud, the way people cheer when they've watched someone drown and come back up. And at the back, quietly, Adam Voss set down his towel and started to leave. He'd done what he came to do. There was no stake to protect anymore. No structure, no reason, in his own head, to stand at the front of a woman's triumph, when he'd given her the company precisely so she'd be free of him. He got 3 steps toward the dark at the edge of the lot. Adam Voss. Rosa's voice. From the window. Carrying across 200 people. He stopped. "You come back here," she said, "in front of all of them. Because I'm going to say a thing to you the way you never once said it to me." He turned around. Rosa came out from behind the window. She walked through the 11 regulars, through the string lights, and she stopped in front of him with the whole downtown lot watching. "You married me to save my mother's hands," she said. The old line. The courthouse line. The guillotine she'd swung on a Tuesday when she thought this was all paperwork. You did. You put the permit in a structure, and you kept the numbers off my back, and you told me it was a device. And then you re-welded her latch in the dark, and you fed my crew out of your own plate, and you paid off the note with everything you had, and you signed the whole company to me so I could walk away clean. Her voice did shake now. She let it. You took apart every reason I had to stay. Every single one. Until the only reason left was the one you were too much of a coward to say. Adam did not move. "So I'll say it," Rosa said. "Stay married to me. Not for the truck. Not for the permit. Not for any structure you can draw on a napkin." She took his hand, the one that had held the keys in the frost. "You married me to save my mother's hands. Stay married to me. For mine." 200 people held their breath in the cold. "Yes," Adam said. One word. It was all he'd ever been able to spend, and he spent it there, in front of everyone, with nothing left to protect him. Rosa pulled him in, and the 11 regulars roared, and the string lights swung, and the brass latch glowed over all of it. Then Ta Carmen came forward. 61 years old in her good dress, carrying the thing wrapped in a dish towel. She unwrapped it in front of them both. It was a box. Wooden, worn soft at the corners, the paint gone at the edges from a lifetime of hands. Rosa knew it before the towel was all the way off. Her mother's recipe box. "She left this with me," Carmen said. "Not with the truck. With me. She told me, give it to Rosa when Rosa has someone to cook for again. Not a customer." Someone. Carmen pressed the box into Rosa's arms. "You have someone, mija. She'd have liked him. She'd have made him eat." Then Carmen turned to Adam. From her palm she took a small pin, the brass latch mark, made in metal, the crook and all. And she pinned it to the chest of his apron, over his heart, with her old sure fingers. "Her hands," Carmen said, "carried forward. You keep them safe now." Adam, who had spent 11 years keeping the numbers off other men's backs and never once let anyone see his own, put his hand over the pin and could not speak either. The truck served 200 plates that night. The mole was her mother's. The latch was her mother's. The name was a brand in 3 cities now, and no one in that lot would ever again call it fake. A year later, it was morning, and it was dark, the way the best hours always are. The 4th prep kitchen hummed. Not a hearing room, not a courthouse, not a curb with $41 on it. A kitchen. Warm, the flat tops ticking as they heated, and in the low light before dawn, 2 people worked shoulder to shoulder, the way they'd worked 100 pre-dawn shifts, except now neither of them was pretending it was only logistics. Rosa folded tamales from her mother's box. Adam ran the morning numbers, and there was a draw in his column now, a real one, in his own hand. By his elbow sat a cup of coffee, scalding, bitter, the way she took it, the way he'd memorized before he ever let himself say a word. He'd made it for her without being asked, the way he'd made it for a year. On the wall of that 4th kitchen hung 2 framed things, side by side. One was a photograph of a woman with flour on her hands and a crooked brass latch behind her, laughing at whoever held the camera. The other, in a plain black frame, was a single register slip, $41. The worst day, kept on purpose. And 2 blocks away, if you walked past it, there was a food hall that had opened and never filled. Empty stalls. A big glass front with no line. The corner Marcus Trell had wanted the truck's permit to feed. It sat dark most days now. Some things you win, and they still come to nothing, if what you built them for walked away from you at a permit office and never looked back. Every truck in the fleet, 4 of them now, had the same door. And on every door where your hand went to open it, they'd made the pull in the shape of the latch. The crook kept. Her mother's hands on every door, in every city, opening for the morning line. Adam looked up from the numbers. He watched Rosa fold, quick and sure, the box open beside her. "We could do a 5th, he said. "The East Side wants us. The math works." Rosa didn't look up. She smiled, though. He could hear it in her voice. "Then we'll be faster than them," she said. The old line, from the cold truck, the night she bet everything on bigger instead of safer. Adam said. And this time there was nothing to underestimate. He'd learned that lesson a year ago, in a truck in the blue dark, and he'd never make it again. She slid a plate toward him. "A real one. Warm. Eat," Rosa said. "I count the drawer. Remember, I know when you skip." Adam Voss, who had once fed a crew out of his own dinner and told no one, picked up the fork. "Some things you save with money. The truck. The note. The permit welded to the lot. You save those with a check and a signature and a man draining his account across a table from someone who wanted to take it all. But the rest of it, the woman folding tamales in the dark, the coffee made scalding without asking, the 2 pairs of hands moving together before the sun is even up. You don't save that with money. You never could. You save that the way Rosa's mother saved it. The way it gets carried forward, with 2 pairs of hands, and a crooked latch, and the willingness, finally, to say the one word out loud, Comment the city you'd want a Delgado's in. The city didn't know any of this, of course. The people who stood in the morning line at the downtown lot, the same lot, the original permit, Rosa's mother's grandfathered square of pavement, they just knew the coffee was ready at 7, and the food was worth the wait. They didn't know about the $41 drawer. They didn't know about a Tuesday courthouse with one witness still in a cook's apron, or a napkin with a structure drawn on it in blue pen, or a man who had once sat on the other side of lending desks and told himself it was only numbers. They just knew the line moved fast, and the food was honest, and if you came back enough times, the woman at the window would remember your name. That was enough. Rosa's mother had always said that was enough. You feed people well and you remember their names and the rest of it, the notes and the permits and the financing structures. The rest of it either works itself out or it doesn't, and you deal with whichever comes. Rosa had spent years believing the second half of that wisdom was defeat dressed as acceptance. She understood now it was something else. Her mother had known what she could control and what she could not, and she had never wasted a morning's energy on the difference. She had saved her energy for the fold. Rosa saved her energy for the fold. Across the prep kitchen, Adam had the ledgers open and his coffee untouched. She watched him do this sometimes, without him knowing, watched him go somewhere quiet inside a column of figures. His pen moving, but his eyes not. She had thought once that it meant he was leaving. Going back to the version of himself that structured loans for people who could afford them, who built nothing with their hands, who drove clean from one glass lobby to the next. She knew better now. He went quiet when the numbers were good. Not because good numbers bored him, because he still every time expected them to lie. They're not lying, Rosa said. He looked up. The numbers, she said. Whatever you're waiting for them to do, they're not going to. Adam looked back down at the ledger. He didn't argue. He'd learned, over a year of shoulder-to-shoulder mornings, that she read the room the way she read a pot, not by formula, but by what the thing was telling her right now, in this moment, with her hands close to it. East Side numbers look good too, he said finally. I know. We'd need a crew lead. Someone who can run the opening week without us there. I know someone. He looked up again. She was already back to the prep, her hands moving the way her mother's hands had moved in the photograph on the wall. The one taken before Rosa was born, the converted taco cart behind her, the woman looking sideways into the camera like she found the whole enterprise mildly amusing and entirely worth it. When did you decide? Adam asked. Rosa was quiet for a moment. The folding had a rhythm, and she kept it. Probably when you signed your stake away, she said. You spent everything, and didn't tell me first. I figured a man with that kind of poor judgment needed someone to keep the books with him for the long term. Adam said nothing, but there was a sound from his side of the kitchen, the ledger pages turning, the pen uncapping, and something in the quality of his silence had changed. She'd learned to hear the difference. The quiet that was waiting for the numbers to go wrong, and the quiet that was just a man, at peace, doing the only honest work he'd ever wanted to do. Her coffee was at his elbow, scalding and bitter, the way she'd taken it since the first winter of the truck. He'd made it without asking. He'd been making it without asking for over a year. Outside, the city was starting its noise. The morning line would form in 40 minutes. The brass latch on the serving window caught the first light the way it always did. The way it had caught the light when her mother's hands were the ones opening it, and the way it would catch the light, Rosa supposed, for as long as anyone kept opening it. She kept opening it.